So obviously this isn't a mindset that just comes naturally to everyone.
Today, I'm here with Jack. He's the CEO at Haven Vacation Rentals. Jack has essentially succeeded with Haven Vacation Rentals in growing this operation to more than 240 properties under management. How did you figure it out, though, that just throwing more people into a problem won't solve the problem?
Very painfully. We were growing so fast. We were onboarding 12 a month or more. We onboarded 20 to 30 in a couple months as well. So it was fast growth. Honestly, it could have been 80, it could have been 140.
You cannot time this. You cannot say, I'm just going to work hard when I'm needed. It has to be part of who you are. And clearly there was something in you that made you want to work that hard.
I'm really competitive. There's no point in doing something if you're not going to be the best at it. You've done all the hard work of getting the exact person that you want to go after who is also interested in needing management. Anything less than 8 out of 10 should be seen as we need to get better at sales.
Let's get tactical here for a minute. When times are challenging and it's not like business is just falling from the sky, what does that look like? What do you think has really moved the needle in terms of initiatives to drive more pipeline and to grow in such a competitive market?
If you're hung up on failing, probably not going to succeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we aim to bring together entrepreneurs, investors, founders, leaders, operators in the vacation rental and hospitality space so they can tell us about their stories, the lessons that they have learned along the way, as well as maybe some of the mistakes they might have made along the way so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm here with Jack. He's the CEO at Haven Vacation Rentals. He's someone that has a very unique story, someone that started in this organization years ago and has done it all, touched all the areas, started from the ground up, and has earned the current role through sweat equity, hard work, and just a lot of intentionality throughout the process. So we're going to be talking about how we have essentially succeeded, or Jack has essentially succeeded with Haven Vacation Rentals in growing this operation to more than 240 properties under management. Everything that has worked from an owner acquisition standpoint, from a guest experience standpoint, operational best practices, and also what it takes, in terms of a mindset to be able to, as a young leader, grow to the level that Jack has been able to grow. So super excited to discuss all of this with Jack on. So thank you, Jack, for taking the time. We want to start with a little bit of a question here that we like to open with, which is, if you were to start all over again, okay, in this business, in this industry, knowing what you know today, right? What if anything would you do differently, or would you advise yourself?
Yeah. If we were starting from scratch, I think we would start very, very, very lean and get to a point where we literally couldn't do the work on our own until we make that next hire, and work that way before working yourself out of the day-to-day. Maybe a little bit too early. I feel like, we've done that somewhat well. I think we could have done that a little bit better. We would have stayed a little bit more lean. We would have learned a little bit more operationally, kept a closer touch just on the front lines there for a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. Other than that, personally, if I was to start over, I think I would work a little harder. As you know, my story is a little bit different. So just from where I came, I think I would just work harder. I think I worked hard, but I think looking back, I'm like, man, if I worked a little harder, like, the company could be further by now. And I think I would have rather done that.
Okay. So let's tackle it one at a time. So let's start with, you say you wish you had maybe stayed more lean. So what do you say that did you guys overhired perhaps a little too early?
Yeah. I think that would probably be one of our larger mistakes, is overhiring a little too early. I think, starting in the business, as you know, I started a little bit differently in this industry personally, but mm-hmm. The business, when it started, we didn't really know what we were doing. So when we started, our company was started in the city next to the Smoky Mountains. And so we were essentially just managing a couple Airbnbs is how it started. Mm-hmm. And so as we moved into the Smoky Mountains, which was a vacation rental market with 20,000 listings. It's a lot different. And we just didn't really know the business model, didn't know anyone in the industry. And so it's like, well, yeah, how do you really run a business in general? And so just essentially throwing people at problems, and that caused issues with the business, but also the people, because they were like, we're just getting thrown at problems. They don't really know how to solve them. They don't feel like they
Mhm.
have great direction. And it took us a long time to figure that out.
How did you figure it out though? How did you figure out that like just throwing more people into a problem won't solve the problem?
Very painfully. I mean, it took a long time, man. It took, a full year of like essentially restructuring our company around what that looked like. I mean, we would have a position and we would like, there's no way that we can go without this position, and then we figure out we can. And it's like, okay, that wasn't needed. It's like, I think focusing on revenue producing work was a really big thing for us early on, or as we were making that change, sorry. And so it was like, what are the areas, positions of the company that directly affect revenue or directly affect scores and guest experience, which then does affect revenue, obviously. And how do we build our team around that? And so we started there. We read a lot of books, talked to a lot of people of different industries, of like what they've done too. I mean, EOS was a really big help for us early on. It still is something that we use, but like during that time, I mean, we were religiously reading that
Mhm.
and following that model, and that helped us a lot. And so I would say that's one of the number one things that
Mhm.
really gave us an eye opening on position, structure of the company, what all that should look like, and how to go from there.
And would you mind giving us some examples or context? EOS, right? For those that are not familiar with that system, what does it entail? But also, how did you guys were thinking about putting it in practice? But also, when you're looking at having overhired, it's tricky because it's like, how do you differentiate roles that are essential from the roles that
Right.
aren't? And so yeah, how did you guys
Yeah.
manage that transition once you realized that, again, throwing more people at a problem wouldn't
Yeah.
solve the problem?
Well, honestly, like I said, it was painful. It's like we overhired to the point where like we weren't really profitable for a while. Like it wasn't necessarily the most profitable model. And so we're like, okay, we need to change this. And so we were forced to do that, and we were forced to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like, oh, this was the magic button. It's like, okay, we can't have this role, and we want this person, whoever it is, we want them to be on our team. They're a good fit, but it doesn't make sense for the business, and we're not profitable at all. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just grind work. It's like, well, I guess we'll do four people's jobs for a while, and then you
Mm-hmm.
refine that with process, right? It doesn't have to be one person just head down the whole time. Like there's process behind these things. You can use technology in all different ways. EOS really helped of like defining what the core functions of the business should be. So, the finance, marketing, revenue, owners, all in kind of one thing for us, and then operations. So like separating those things out really helped us. Who do we need to cover those functions? What does that look like? Um, Even to this day, I have like a whiteboard or a chalkboard in my house, and like I pretty consistently draw our org chart out and make sure that where we're at and where we're going, this is consistently making sense, and like everyone's doing what they should be doing. And because you could just have overhired and you don't know it as well, and like um, someone's just not working, and that's not a huge fear for us at all now, especially. But it's just something to keep in mind. Like we want everyone to be fulfilled in their work, to have a good job, a good employment here, to also be serving the business that they work for well, and like we're investing in them and they're investing in us too.
Mm-hmm. 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 That makes a lot of sense. So in terms of your sort of story, which is again pretty unique, right? In terms of how you got to where you are today, would you mind just telling us that story at a high level? We'll get into the timeline and the details, but how do you
Yeah.
how do you end up, being the CEO of Haven Vacation Rentals?
Yeah. So my really good friend now, who started the business, started it in the city where we live, which is, like I said, right outside the Smokies. Um, he started it then like 2016, and just kind of did his own thing really for years. Like I said, it was very small. He had like one or two employees with him, just kind of did his own thing. And I didn't know him. So I was in college. I was actually 16 in 2016. So um, I was in high school. But when as in college, I was about to get married to my wife, and at the time I had a job. I worked all throughout college, but I didn't have a job right as I graduated. Like, essentially just didn't have a job at that point. And one of my buddies knew this guy and was like, hey, he might need someone to set properties up. So at the time we were doing furnishing projects, which was horrible. And I don't think maybe one day we'll do this again, but at the time it was rough. Essentially real estate was like really, really hot in 2020 timeframe and everywhere, but in the Sevierville market, it was really hot. And people were just buying these properties essentially sight unseen and they needed to be furnished. And so that was a service that we offered to get business in the door. It was just the unique thing. Most PMs weren't doing it at the time. And, we were able to do that. And it was a really cool thing for people. So I got a part-time job doing that, putting furniture together is what that job was. And so it was cool. I had to drive around a lot. It's like the Smokies is a huge market. So I would drive like an hour to the Smokies and then drive for like 8 hours around like to different properties, setting up projects or whatever. And I did that pretty consistently. I did that for like 2 weeks before I got married, came back, kept doing it. And then, yeah, I mean, I did that for a while and then led a team of people doing that. We had a lot of employees at that level doing that at that time. We had like 16 to 20 people or something like that. Who were doing these furnishing projects at that time. So the whole arm of the business. And so kind of led that group of people and doing that, over the next few months, kind of made that transition and just worked hard at it.
This is
And
still within
wild.
the property management company.
Furnishing.
This
Yeah,
furnishing
still within Haven.
division is within this larger.
Right.
And at that point,
Yeah.
how many properties did Haven Vacation Rentals managed, more or less, like just to have a little bit of context?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were growing so fast. So I want to say it was under 100, but like we were onboarding like 12 a month or more. We onboarded like 20 to 30 in a couple months as well. So it was like fast growth.
Okay.
So I honestly, it could have been 80, it could have been 100.
Okay. And when you joined, at this point, you were not reporting to the founder, or
No. I was just this is someone else that I worked for. I didn't even know the founder at all.
You didn't even
I
know
talked
the
on
founder.
phone
Like
one time.
you had not
No.
been recruited by the founder. It's like just
No.
Was the
No.
founder a young guy like yourself, or was it someone
He's
older?
10 years older than me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so he's 10 years older. And so I, started doing that.
So you started like entry level,
Yeah.
that like got it.
Part-time. I was like hoping to get full-time hours.
Right.
I did get some full-time hours. And so we were just doing that, building out these huge furnishing projects. I mean, some of the places were massive, 6 to 8 bedroom properties. I think we did a 12-bedroom property, just huge places. And so it was really cool. It was fun to be able to do that. Over time, I just stayed diligent to working as hard as I could. I mean, that was kind of towards the time when we didn't have a lot of process down, and we'd have like 5 to 10 of these furnishing projects going at once. And there was no real like, hey, Jack, you're going to run this thing. It was just like, someone needs to plan this out and do this. And so at night, I would just get on my computer and like plan out where people would need to go and like what that should look like, and just kind of
You
get the team
just
together.
took initiative. No one told you do this. You just said this has to be done. Let's do it.
Right. And so I just kind of started doing that. The Lord's blessed me with leadership, I believe. So it's just something that I feel called to do. And so I just did that for a couple months. And I think the Lord really blessed me in that, honestly, and just gave me more and more opportunity as time went on. And, through that, I obviously got closer to working with the founder of the business, and just some other people that I know who worked there, and just got more and more close with them and asked me to do more and more things. And I did like every position I think in the business. From there, I just like jumped around. While I was in that role, I asked the founder if I could be his assistant a lot, and he kept saying no. I just asked him too many times, where I think he finally said yes. I was like, you don't have to pay me anything more. I'll do my job and then do this. I just want to learn more. And he let me do that, which was really cool. So that really helped a lot, learning the business and learning how it ran. I knew nothing about business. I went to school for ministry. I knew nothing about it. So it was cool. He gave me a lot of books to read. So I just read everything he gave me, watched a lot of videos online, anything that I could figure out about how stuff worked. So I was very interested in it. And yeah, I just dove in.
Wow. Man, okay, so I know that titles don't mean much when you're a startup, when you're, growing, but still it kind of gives an idea of like the timeline. So if I go through your profile here, you start here, logistics support team coordinator, then you went on to become process improvement and guest communications manager. Then you became senior manager of guest relations and communications, senior manager of operations, guest experience, chief operating officer, and then CEO. So the question I have here is, at which point in this sort of timeline here do you get to like you felt like your talent was finally being sort of like
Yeah.
seen, and like you were
Yeah.
in the spotlight, like the founder saw something in you? Like when was that transition point, like trying to be seen, and not necessarily be seen, but like, work hard just because it's what needs to be done, but at first it doesn't necessarily get noticed. When do you feel like that first got noticed, and why do you think that was the case?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I knew if I had any talent. I still don't know if I have any talent. I think the Lord's blessed me with the ability to want to work hard, and He's given me a lot of drive, and I appreciate that. But I would say the guest communication, the first guest communications role on there. So those roles. The reason I have them on there, like you said, sometimes startup roles can mean
Yeah.
whatever. I have those on there because they are what I did. And I remember like every one of those is different, a little bit different of like what I was responsible for and how that worked. So that first role, I literally was on a shift is what I did. Like I think it was like 4 to midnight consistently, and like it switched essentially. So on my phone of like dealing with guest issues, and we had like a couple of VAs at the time who were helping us with this, and they were like messaging and reporting about, hey, we had these problems, and then I would have to call the guests up until midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was just doing that. That was that first role, just on the shifts consistently. Um, and there was, to answer your question, there was probably a time, I think it was in um yeah, I mean, our business went through a lot of ups and downs, man. Like in December of 2022, we had a really rough period of the market in general, like declining from the COVID time and just where our business was at. And, it resulted in like, a lot of people on our team, it's just some tough stuff with money. Like we couldn't really afford to pay everyone all the time at this point, this month in our business, right? And so essentially we were saying like, hey, everyone stop working like in the middle of the day. We just want everyone to work part-time for a month. Essentially what we had to do is that's what we had to do. And so a huge ice storm hits the Smoky Mountains at that time. And like, I mean, it still hasn't been one bigger than that. And it was just massive. And everyone got frozen in their properties on top of the mountains. All the roads were frozen, and like all the electricity was shut off. They didn't have any service, and all the incoming guests were still coming in. And, we had, I think it was like 100 something properties at this point, and like all of them turned. And so, we had 100 something guests coming in and 100 that were supposed to be leaving that couldn't leave and didn't have cell phone service, or they didn't have running water for days or anything. So is that during that time, I was just like, I am supposed to work part time, but like, I'm just gonna be on the phone. I was on the phone for, you know, 70 hours straight or something crazy, like just the whole time, day and night worked with the founder at this point, because it was his business and like he's working all the time, no matter what. And I was like, well, one person literally cannot do this. And so I'm going to help him out. I just felt like the right thing to do. So, that's when I probably got to know him a little bit better, was during that stint. And I'll probably remember that forever because that was wild. I mean, I remember trying to like go to dinner. This was around Christmas time. I was like, go to a Christmas thing dinner, and I was like, this isn't even going to work. I had to go outside on the front porch and be on the phone for hours, and just helping guests like figure it out. And there wasn't any real solution. I mean, they're stuck on top of a mountain. It's iced over. No one can come get them out. It's just trying to make sure they had water, and food. And so it was a wild time. But through that process, I think I probably got some more responsibility after that. Just, I wanted to work hard too, but up until then, I was just working and wanting to work hard. I wasn't really going any direction with it. I just wanted to work hard, but I just felt like I needed to help. So I did.
That is so interesting, man. So yeah, so the the opportunity is it's like the fact that you had been working hard all this time, and that this is part of who you are, made it so that, I mean, when the time came to have to, work hard, uh that happened to align with, like, you know being in a position where you were proven to be very helpful. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you cannot time this. You cannot say,
Right.
I'm just going to work hard when I'm needed, so that the recognition can come later. Like, it has to be part of who you are, and clearly there was something in
Yeah.
you that made you want to work that hard. And yet, when we started, you said that, if you could do something differently, you would want to work even harder. So what's why how are you wired, man? Like,
Yeah.
what are you thinking when you're starting out, and you say you're just working hard without necessarily knowing what this is going to lead to? Do you have an end goal in mind at that point? Do you tell yourself, like, I'm doing this with the hope of being able to grow? Or is it just like, hard work is just what I'm supposed to do, and I feel this duty to just do the best, and that's it, that's all? Like, what
Yeah.
how are you wired in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really competitive, so I think that helps. I have a younger brother who's really close to my age. We've always been super competitive. We grew up playing basketball together,
Mm-hmm.
and so played a lot of sports, just super, super, super competitive. I mean, yeah, it started in basketball, just like I want to be the best that I can be, and there's no point in doing something if you're not going to be the best at it. You're not going to try to be the best at it. So that's where my mindset has been at historically, and I think that just kind of carried over. I will say it historically it was a hard mindset to keep at times. I mean, it's a pretty aggressive, forward thinking thing, especially if you don't see the future. So you're trying to trust the Lord and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, where this is going. I'm just going to work hard. And looking back on it, I'm like, man, if I didn't know, but if I did know what I know now, like I would have worked a lot harder in some areas. I would have just focused a lot more because it all worked out. I, uh, I would have focused more on weekends. I would have focused more on nights. I would have put in the work, especially at that time. Like my wife played college soccer, so she was like going to games and things. I'm like, I could work all the time, and still have time to hang out with my friends. I didn't
You
have
didn't have
kids.
a
You know what I
kid
mean?
yet?
It
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
what I was gonna say.
right, yeah. I mean, that was a time of my life. Still is to an extent. Like I work very hard. I try to, but especially then, like all hours of the day and night, there were times I did do that. But I'm like, I could have strung that together a little bit more consistently, had a better outcome. I could have worked on myself more as well.
Mm-hmm.
Really gotten better at my time management. Really, around that time is when I started this of like, what am I doing right now? And is this positively impacting the business, myself, our growth, everything? And if it's not, maybe I should stop doing it and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think there's temptation of like in any job, you're like, okay, I got my work done, so now I'm done for the day, or I got most of my important work done, so now I have some easy tasks I can finish the day out with, and it's like trying to get out of that mindset as early as possible. I would have tried to gotten out early.
Interesting. Now, when you were given that first sort of that first level of additional responsibility, after you were proven that you were reliable, that you were there for
Hmm.
the team, and when it counted most, and even when it wasn't needed, like, what was that feeling in terms of, was there any element of, like, am I ready for this? Was there any, like, internal dialogue of, like, how am I going to take on this challenge here? And if it wasn't right there, like, what was the time when you felt like you were given a responsibility that you had to really, like, get yourself out of your comfort zone to take on the challenge and say, okay, you know what, I might not be ready, but I will figure it out?
Yeah. Um, and I don't know. I think have a lot of blind confidence, which can be really good or bad thing. So sometimes I just try to like, I don't think about it as much. I'm just like, I'm just doing what's in front of me. I just focus
Hmm.
what's in front of me and I just put my head down and do it. And, if I have more responsibility, then I'm doing that more responsibility. Then I try not to think about failure as an option. And if it
Hmm.
is, I'll learn from it and move on. But, if you're hung up on failing, you're probably not going to succeed. So
Hmm.
it's like, I'm just going to try the best I can. and the Lord would bless that one way or another.
But when's the first time that you felt that
The
you really needed to stretch your abilities and your comfort zones, because just the responsibilities just now require another level
Yeah, I
of
mean,
skill sets, of know-how,
right.
of you know what I mean, is you can still be
Yeah,
confident in
definitely.
your ability to succeed, but you're like, okay, there's something that is changing here, and there are some skill sets that I'm going
Yeah.
to need to develop here. When was that moment, and what do you think was the main skill that you had to develop to make that transition now into more like leadership type roles within the
Hmm.
organization?
Yeah. I think the leadership stuff is a big part of that. Early, I did a lot of offshore, like building out our VA staff internally, and that took a long time for me to do. It was a really big project. I learned a lot through that, and had people reporting to me. A lot of people reporting to me within that time frame and such. Had to learn to be a boss. But I would say probably that COO role, which was like one I had right before this, is just operations side. And most of the business was under me, like these big decisions that influence people's livelihoods. I think at that point I was like, okay, if I make a wrong decision on whatever it might be financially, on the moving forward, this financial strategy, like that could really affect livelihood. And I think I took that a lot more seriously, and it weighed on me heavier too. I mean, I think leadership is part of that. It can be very rewarding, it can also be very difficult at times. And so
Hmm.
times that I've had to have those difficult conversations and just making decisions around people's livelihoods, around their jobs. And then that's just been a very difficult thing that I've had to grow in and trust the Lord in. He's been kind to lead me well, and that have good words to say, to build up and encourage. Um, Try to do that to the best of my ability. But I would say holding like those jobs, and being responsible for that a little bit more than just having someone report to you and telling them what to do. You know what I mean? I think I felt the weight of that a little bit heavier.
And then how did you navigate that in terms of like, what do you think are the elements of a successful leader, and which are those that you had to purposely spend time on thinking about improving on? Was it the
Yeah.
one-on-ones? Was it the feedback giving, having the hard conversations, making the financial decisions? Like, what was it for you that you felt you really had to purposely try to develop in terms of leadership skill sets?
Yeah. So a lot of those big decisions, man, I mean, I pray a lot. And so I trust the Lord. I pray that He'll give me the wisdom to make good decisions. I pray for wisdom and leadership. A good leader has to be led well. And so I believe that the Lord has really blessed, work of my hands, the work of our business as well. It's because we come to Him and say, hey, you gave us this. We want to steward this well. One of our core values is faithful stewardship. Like, owners give us properties. It's our duty to steward those well. It's our duty to steward our employees well and treat them well. I want to be led well and do that. I don't want every decision just to come from me. I want the Lord to influence that. And it's also from other people, though. Like, I really reach out to people outside of this industry quite often. That's something that I'm really, really big on. I feel like people could do that more. I was talking to someone about this the other day of, I have friends who's a CEO at a sales company. I try to reach out to him. Someone who owns a bookkeeping business. I try to reach out to them. Some executives at just random different businesses. And I'm like, I have this problem. Can you help me with it? They know nothing about the short-term rental industry, but they've been in business for 20 years and they know a lot about business. And so
Hmm.
a lot of times that outside perspective can just be super, super helpful. But as to the more practical stuff, yeah, I think the one-on-ones and things like that, I improved over time. I think it was kind of hard. Like, I get into a one-on-one early and I'm like, I don't really know, what we're going to be talking about. Uh, but there's a lot of templates out there. I mean, there's a lot of people who have done this before. There's a lot of books that say, hey, here's some successful things, and you can pull from those. I try to read a lot. And so I'm always pulling ideas to build out, one-on-one meetings or different ways to lead. I think Jocko Willink has really good stuff in his leadership strategy and tactics. I think it is Dichotomy of Leadership. Those two books, like, you got some pretty practical, like, say this, don't say this, and it's like that stuff is actually pretty helpful. And I don't just stick to one thing. I try to use it, when I think it could be valuable.
Hmm.
But it's also just been identifying kind of who's who and how to lead each person individually a little bit differently. So, I mean, you could have someone who's like super outgoing and is great at sales, and you just need to point them in a direction and they can just make stuff happen. Or you have someone who really wants to work on their thing, put their head down and stay in between the lines, and they do really well that way. I had to work really hard on building the lines. Like, okay, I need to build some blinders for you in a good way because that's what you need. It's what you want. That's what you do best in, and that's how you excel. And that was hard for me to learn because I'm not that way. I'm just kind of very, a little bit more out there of like I can get anything done if you ask me to get it done. I'll figure it out. So just knowing how to approach different people, lead them differently individually, learn more about them, and just really care about them has been the big thing.
Wow, that is interesting. And what do you think is the biggest piece of advice that you've gotten either from people you've approached from other industries, or maybe even a lesson you might have gotten early on from your founder, at Haven Vacation Rentals? Like, what do you think is a very influential piece of advice you've gotten that has really sort of shifted the way you do things or the way you think through things?
That's a good question. Um, uh, I think like one thing not being afraid to work hard, I think is something that goes into a lot of different areas. So there was a time, earlier on when I was getting paid a certain amount and I was doing like probably a lot more than I was getting paid to do. And I questioned that pretty heavily too. And I even came to my dad, who's very successful in business and what he does, kind of brought this to him like, hey, I'm thinking about toning it back to like where I think my value is in relation to where I'm getting paid. And he was not happy that I brought that up to him. he, he was like, um, you know, that's not what we do. You work as hard as you possibly can work no matter what the circumstance. And if you think you need to change the circumstance, you can change the circumstance, but that doesn't influence how hard that you work wherever you are. So that's something really early on that was good for me to learn and has been re-influenced by these other business owners and leaders that I've talked to of like, you just don't know how you're going to, how you could be rewarded, how the business could be rewarded for what you're doing. And in trying not to think of it as like, well, I'm getting paid for this, so I'm doing this. It's I'm going to work as hard as I physically possibly can at all times while also maintaining my family, and everything else that I have is a responsibility as a man, in all areas of my life, not just work. Like when I go to work, I'm away from my family. So why would I go to work and not work as hard as I physically can until I come home and be with my family as much as I can? You know what I mean? It's like I'm not just going to go waste time somewhere for 8 hours when I could be home with my family. And so making that switch of like, I'm just going to work as hard as I can on the right things at all the times and just keep refining that over and over and over and over until I feel like I have it right, which might not be ever. But if I feel like if I do it for long enough, I'm just going to get better. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
Ah, man, you have no idea how much I'm enjoying this chat here. So let me read this to you, if you don't mind. I won't read the whole thing. This is a book. When was this photo taken? This must have been 10 years ago or something that I read this book. That really, really has a quote here that I think resonates a lot with what you're saying. So it goes something like, man must do with faith and purpose all that can be done each day, doing each separate thing in an efficient and successful manner, always more than filling his present place. Always give every man more in use value than taking in cash value in every transaction. So this mindset of your duty is to do more than what you're paid to do. Some people hear that and they get offended by that. Some people hear
Mhm.
that and are like, why would I do more than what I'm paid to do?
Yeah.
What do you think they don't get?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can answer that for everyone, but yeah, I don't work for any man. I work for the Lord. And so I feel like I'm called in all areas of my life to do that, not just work. And so I think it's a calling I have in work for sure, because it's part of my life. It's a really big part of my life, obviously. But it's also at home with my wife and with my child now, who's a week old, which is crazy. And at my church and everywhere else that I'm have devoted time to in my life. Now I can be pretty specific on where I want to give my time, like work. my family and fitness are big areas. I don't have a lot of time for other things, obviously. And so that's been intentional. But in those areas that I've chosen, I'm going to give everything that I have. And yeah, I think I'm called to do that. And so that's where my drive comes from. And so other people might find that other places. I think that, having that higher calling gives me the longevity of that to continue it. This is a lifelong calling. It's not a 2-year calling, if that makes sense.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, well, this is interesting. And then when do you move from COO to CEO, and how does that transition happen?
Yeah. Well, it honestly wasn't a huge switch in what I was doing.
Okay, the
The
day to day
CEO
was
role,
already very
yeah,
similar to what. Okay.
yeah. The CEO role that was a lot more outward facing, which I hadn't done before. Like, I talked to our owners in the past, obviously, and things like that. But now it's more I'm the guy, like I'm the last guy, and there's no
Hmm.
one. I'm not calling anyone else. And so there was a kind of that last straw there. And just much more strategic, multi-year forward-facing decisions, responsibility of the entire company, the entire budget, everything there. It's just all encompassing. So as far as like the business day to day goes, that was the COO role. As far as this other layer on top of like new thing to learn here, is strategy and where we're going in the future and how to build our business and where we should be focused on in order to get that done. And it's been really cool to be able to do that and learn more about it.
So other than just continuing to work hard, in terms of what you have in front of you at every role you've had, what do you think you did right that led the founder to say, because it takes a lot of humility to say as a founder, I'm going to let this kid become the
Yeah.
CEO and take over, and
Yeah.
again, I'm just saying this kid in the sense that, like, you're young, we're the same age, so I'm not saying kid in a
Yeah.
negative way, just like
No,
it
definitely.
takes humbleness for a founder to say, I think this person here is um, better equipped to do this than I might be, and not only that, but not let their perception be influenced by the fact that, hey, but he's young, so he has never done this, so he doesn't have this experience. So, like, what did you did right other than just work tremendously hard? Because that I think has been made clear to really make it make sense despite the lack of quote unquote paper experience.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely messed up at times, but I think working really hard is one of the bigger things, obviously, like just knowing that I'll continue to do that. But I think skill wise, I mean, I've really, really tried to get better at sales type, outward facing leadership. Those big pillars of things. Like, there's been a big focus. Something I'm naturally gifted at as well. And I mean, I spent a lot of time just trying to get better at that and trying to take feedback and ask for feedback and meet with people outside of our business and just learn more. And I do think the Lord has blessed me and I've gotten better at that, like skill wise. I've gotten better at talking with people on, talking with owners, bringing on new owners, like being able to do those things, just like learn the skill really well, learn sales, learn how to talk to those types of people, talking to real estate owners. Some of the people we work with are very, very successful and just, I'm young. So I need to learn how to talk with these people. And so just being able to hold myself in those conversations well. And I was really nervous to start doing those, honestly, at a young age. Talk to some of these guys who are developers, own 50, 60 properties or whatever. It's like, what common ground do we have here? How can I, and it sometimes I didn't do well. And I think I just learned how to do that a little bit better. And so I think there's some skill stuff that he saw. I mean, I also think that he had a lot of humility. He's also led by the Lord. And I think it takes a lot of humility to do that. And he also has given me some good critical feedback that I've been able to take humbly, because I think the Lord's really worked in my heart to be able to take that well, I think at a time of my life. And probably wouldn't have taken super critical feedback really, really well. Like him saying, "Hey, you're really bad at this. You need to get better at this before I let you do anything else." And I think like being able to take that feedback and get better with it instead of getting mad and like, I think that's something
Hmm.
that the
What
Lord's been
was
able to soften my heart. Like, you're not great at some things. You need to get better at them.
what was the hardest pill to swallow there in terms of feedback that you got that really, it took a lot of wisdom and humility for you to accept, digest, and then put in practice?
I think this might not answer your question directly. The most influential piece of feedback though that he did give me that really I took and like learned a lot from was during this transition of like when I was, the COO role there. That was a long transition. It was a 6 month type transition into that role. And he had a lot of feedback for me during that time, which is good. And one of them was, you know, trying to make that switch from like, hey, you're part of this group of people, and you're transitioning to be their leader. And there is a difference in that. Not that you can't have fun with them anymore, not that you can't crack jokes but they're like looking to you for their jobs.
Mhm.
They're like looking to you as a leader whenever things are times are tough and when things are going well. And so that was a really hard distinction for me to make early. I think it took a while for me to get that. And so, okay, I understand that. It's just acting a little bit differently, had to get a lot more mature really quickly, and I still need to do that. I think that forced me to mature heavier in that time.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I can imagine how, you know, you basically maybe were even reporting to some people or working under them in, as part of their teams or whatever. Next thing you know,
Mm.
you're their colleague and their friend, and you know, and then next thing you know, you're in charge and so it's like it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't mean you're more important, less important. It just means like, hey, there's a difference now in responsibilities that you have to be careful there, because I can see how that can affect personal relationships if it's not taken care of the right way. Because what if someone thinks, oh, because I've been friend with Jack all the time, now that he's in charge, I can do whatever, right? Because I know he's my friend, but now you're in the role of the CEO. So it's like, yeah, I guess that maturity component that you said is crucial. um how do you think strategically, though, in terms of like, okay, we've talked about a lot of the soft skills related to the leadership and whatnot, but in terms of like the larger picture side of things, which is a crucial element of being a CEO as well, um, how do you I don't want to say force that, because it's not force, but again, you're put in this role. You cannot just wait naturally for the next 10 years to have your strategic thinking to be developed. You kind of have to start thinking strategically right now, because you're in that role right now. So in terms of that strategic thinking, what does that look like for you? Is it just like planning periods of time that you block in your calendar? Is it just like those conversations with people from other industries?
Yeah.
How did you develop that side of the business, or of the skills
Yeah.
that comes with being a CEO?
Yeah. I have a quarterly planning retreat that I do every quarter and just kind of, pull away for
By
at least a
yourself?
day. I do it with our founder who's works with me in the business right now still. Um, And this year I did one with my wife too. Actually, I just got back from that recently, and so
Okay.
I guess we did do two, one by myself and one with him. And so that's one small. That's not a huge thing, honestly. That's like very on the nose. Like here's exactly what these are, what our goals are. Before that, trying to get to that point of like, what are we going to talk about? Um, I usually don't have like these set times in my calendar. Like, okay, I'm going to think strategically for an hour. I just find I get distracted in that hour, and so I end up not doing it, kind of doing something more urgent. And so I have like notes on my phone, and I get a lot of just ideas that are sometimes just horrible, and sometimes they're good, and have sounding boards, people to like bounce these off of and try to, does this make sense? Could this make sense or not going forward? Is this right? And a lot of times they'll come away with, at the end of a month, you have 3 to 4 things that seem to make really, really good sense going forward for the next year. or maybe it's for the next 2 months. It can be different at times, but there's not like a one set way that I do it. I do try to consume a lot of content, like business content. Yeah, maybe that's some people think it's a waste of time. It's not for me. I try to get as much advice as I possibly can from people I know and people I don't know online, whether that be books, videos, whatever it be. I get a lot of ideas from there, honestly,
Hmm.
of people in different industries who have done something or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that could be really interesting if we applied that to our industry. And so, I mean, like a really practical example of that is the sales stuff, like, where we bring on homeowners and things of like just getting the ideas of like, why don't we train our sales rep, um, like live? Like, why don't I just sit with him and have these live back and forth conversations and go over objections for an hour at a time
The role
consistently?
playing,
And
and
it's like,
you and I
yeah,
were talking about how
playing,
it's
because
so
yeah,
common in the tech world, yet it doesn't
right,
seem
yeah,
to be
yeah.
that
It's like,
common
why
in this space. Yeah.
why haven't we done that before? Why haven't I heard of anyone doing that? And so that's just like something pretty easy I got from, I forgot who I got that from. But I was like, we'll try this. And it's something that works really, really well. And it
Hmm.
pays off. Honestly, it really does pay off.
Hmm. Hmm. So let's talk about, in terms of those ideas that you have, put in place. What are you most proud of? What are you most proud of in terms of an initiative or a project or an idea or a concept that you have brought to the table, and that has led to successful outcomes?
That's a good question. As the leader of the company, I don't really do a lot of the work of the business, right? So I can't take credit for really any of it. Our team is the one carrying that out and doing it really well. And so, but I would say there's, some of the things around building our sales pipeline and our sales guy like really buying into that has been huge for us. Just to see us be able to add properties consistently. We're just in a hyper competitive market here in the Smokies. I mean, it is just very competitive. Properties swapping all the time, and there's like 50 PMs that are like legitimate heavy hitters, and probably another 100 on top of that that are still taking properties from us and other people, and we're trying to get them from them all the time. And so really trying to get down to like, okay, we have to be competitive with bringing on business to our company. We can't just expect that a homeowner is going to call us and we're going to just be like, okay, yeah, you're on our program. That's happened before. And, you go through times when real estate's hot where that does happen. But that's not the norm. And that's not been the norm for the past like year and a half for sure. So it's just had to put our nose down and figure out what are tactics that we're going to do to bring on this business. So that's been one really, really crucial area that I feel like I spent a lot of my time thinking about. How do we onboard 10 properties a month, like consistently, and how can we actually do that? And so
Mhm.
it's been something we've been working on a lot.
Let's get tactical here for a minute. So homeowner acquisition, when times are challenging and it's not like business is just falling
Yeah.
from the sky. So how does that look? What does that look like? So we talked about role playing with your reps. You mentioned too there was something about going from just bringing on one individual property at a time to developing your B2B segment, to where you could have people that would, one client would all of a sudden represent a larger, portfolio of properties. What do you think has really moved the needle there in terms of initiatives to drive more pipeline and to grow in such a competitive market?
Yeah. I think that this is a very simple thing, but having a sales rep that's actually good helps a lot. If you're closing 20% of your qualified deals, like what do you do? You're just letting you have everything you need to grow. You're just not growing. You're not bringing on business. And so having someone that's actually really good and training them and training with them and seeing them consistently get better and like, okay, I see this business come in the door on like I see a lead come in and I see him close it on the first call consistently. And I'm like, man, this guy's good. And that helps a lot. Like when you just get a lead and it's just closed on the first call. And so that's something that we've really worked on, just getting better on the phone, getting better, talking with these people. We don't even really have a set pitch at this point. It's just trying to figure out what this client needs and how does our business they do have to be qualified, obviously. And so as long as they're a qualified lead, how can we help them and just coming up with that on the fly that really is a unique pitch to them, and then actually delivering it too on our onboarding and then bringing it on our business. And so I don't think that's the biggest thing is you get these leads, like you have to be good enough to close them. We do have, one really, really cool thing I would say that's helped us a lot. Like I said, competitive market investors are looking to invest here pretty consistently and they're looking for managers already. And so we have the highest rated Google page in our market. I think with the most, we have like 2,500 reviews at a 4.9. And so that helps. That's credibility. That is the highest level of credibility for people looking right now. And so being able to just to have that gets us a lot of leads in the door. But that in conjunction with spending on Google AdWords, the right Google AdWords, like A/B testing what works and what doesn't work, and increasing spend on the things that do work. Like it's just all of that goes into getting that qualified lead in the door. But you could do all that work and not close the lead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's a lot of money you spent. You don't have anything to
Yeah.
show for it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
I'd say
two
that.
things there. Let's start with the Google business profile side of things. That's a lot
Yeah.
of reviews, man. What has worked for you in terms of getting those reviews without sacrificing ratings on the OTAs? Because that's sometimes a concern when people want the Google business reviews, but they don't want that to prevent guests from leaving OTA reviews. So first of all, why did you decide to focus on this in terms of your Google business profile, and how have you succeeded at it?
Yeah. The why is because, like I said, investors are looking in the Smokies to invest in property and to buy property or to have different management. And they're just going to Google and typing in property management company. If they're going to ChatGPT is going to give them the highest rated people anyway, right? And so it's like the same thing. So I just knew, like we knew that's an important thing. That's a pretty big credibility thing there of like if you have a good profile and it's built out well and you look like you're a real business, that helps a lot. So getting that baseline stuff set up. We don't sacrifice reviews from the OTAs for Google. We have a system where essentially if they leave a review on an OTA, they're triggered to leave a Google review after. And so we want to make sure we do get those OTA reviews first, and then anything left over, we're glad to take that. And it turns out it's a lot that we're able to capture pretty consistently. So
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
the notifications on my phone, so I get to see all the 5-star Google reviews come in all day. It keeps me going.
Mm-hmm. And so you've gotten a lot of inbound leads from that.
Yeah, that helps if you're spending that in conjunction with spending on the right AdWords, right? So if you're spending on the right AdWords and then best property management company in Gallenberg or whatever, and our name pops up, that in conjunction with having the highest rated company in the Smokies is like those two things hand in hand are probably going to get a click and probably going to get someone to come to you.
And then to your point, you can get the lead, but if you don't close, then you just lost money. What's a good conversion rate? You said 20% from qualified to lead to client is not a good conversion rate. What is a good conversion rate
That's a I
from
need to
your
figure out
experience?
our exact. Yeah, I don't think I have right now. I don't think I have our exact conversion rate.
No, that's fine. But if
But
20% is bad, starting at which point would you say it's good?
if you have a qualified lead that like would work with you and they've come to, like you've done the work of getting them, so they're inbound at this point. It should be 8 out of 10, 80% is what you should be closing on there. Like
Mm-hmm.
you've done the work of like good Google page and spending money on the right AdWords. This is one point. Not spending money on cabins and Pigeon Forge, because that's not what an investor is searching for. They're searching for management and Pigeon Forge. So like really getting down to those exact keyword matches and spending money there. If you're doing all of that and then you get 10 of those people and they're all 4-bedroom pool cabins that need management, it's like you should be able to, we should be able to close 8 of the 10 of those. Yeah. So if you're spending with terms for intent and then you get, 10 leads and they're 4-bedroom pool cabins and they're looking for management in Gatlinburg, you've done all the hard work of getting the exact person that you want to go after who is also interested in needing management. It's like anything less than 8 of the 10 there should be seen as like, we need to get better at sales. And so that's just been a focus for us. And like I said, I don't have the exact numbers right now. I could have came with that, but I've done it to like I will jump in and do this as well. That's an area where I can actually, as the leader of the business, I can talk to the market just by doing sales calls. I really enjoy doing that. Like you hear what people are looking for, what's most important for them as a client, what are they really looking for? That's the easiest way to do sales calls. And you talk to a guy and you're like, well, I'm actually the CEO. It really helps the call along too. So that's a plus. But and so I do that. I personally try to get better at it consistently as well. So then I can also train our sales guy. Because if I don't know how to
Mhm.
do it, then I can't train anybody else.
Is it one sales guy only, or have you also
Yeah, we just
looked
have we
into
just have one.
scaling? Have you had
We
to
have one
go
guy.
through different books, because you said you need to have the right people in sales? Have you had
Yeah.
to change talent on
Uh,
the sales side of things, or?
no, I mean this guy has been there since I started running the company for sure. He was in this role around the same time, and he's gotten better. He's great. He does a good job.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. What about when it's not inbound? What about the outreach stuff? What has worked
Yep.
as far as that goes?
Yeah. We do a couple different things. We do use like a inventory type service where we send those mailers out and we do stuff like that. But it is more difficult to do outbound. Like it's hard to find those qualified leads. And so whenever we're not just flooded with inbound is when we really shift into doing that outbound stuff. Like right now, man, I mean, our AdWords are doing well. I'll just say that. We have more than we can handle to go through. And so that's been a blessing. And the Lord has blessed our business a lot here in this second quarter with just homeowners wanting to work with us. And so when it's not that way, we have a very long list of old leads or potentially dead leads that we've had over
Mhm.
the years. And we'll cold call those people specifically because we know that they're at least, owners of property or interested in buying a property. And so, I mean, there was a time when I was going through and cold calling like 50 a day myself, just to sharpen skills and build pipeline. Because I want to build the pipeline for I don't want our rep to only be doing that, right? I want him to be able to be closing deals. And so there's a time when I'll do that and fill your pipeline, and then you go close deals. And we did that for a while, and that worked, especially during downturn times. But
Mhm.
we've dabbled in like the actual cold call, like getting data from a provider, like matching it and going through the process. I think JJ's a little bit better at that than me. But there are a lot of different cold calling laws around doing that. And so we've never found like the best way. And we haven't had like the need to really like dive into figuring out outbound on the phone yet, I would say.
And in terms of the Google AdWords stuff, is that in house, or have you outsourced that?
Yeah, it's in-house. I'm still learning it. I
Is it
think I'll
you?
always be
Is it
learning it.
you setting up your Google
I
AdWords?
I manage it right now. Yeah.
Really?
We did pay someone that we knew. It was not like an outsourced thing. We just paid a guy that we knew to help us. Like, I don't even know how to use the thing, like just show me where to click essentially. And he helped us like set up the original stuff. That was years ago though. And so, yeah, since then it's just kind of been me learning how to figure it out and do it. And it's been challenging to learn. I'm not a marketer, but, yeah.
Again, I insist. There's people that are going to look at something like this, going to be like, I don't have that knowledge. I don't know how to do this. It sounds too complicated,
Yeah.
right? And then there's you. Let me just figure it
Yeah.
out, one step at a time. So
Right.
how can people develop that mindset, do you think? Like if someone's not gifted with that, mindset of I can figure things out, do you think there's a way that can be developed?
Yeah. Well, I guess if I knew the perfect answer to this, then we, everyone would have like a perfect mindset, right? So obviously, this isn't a mindset that just comes naturally to
But
everyone.
I mean, I'm sure you
But
I'm sure you see this in terms of trying to develop this
yeah, yeah,
mindset
yeah,
in your team, right? Like your team,
right, right,
you have to
yeah,
you have to cultivate this mindset with them as well.
yep. I think it's a big ownership mentality. It's extreme ownership, and it's not just in work; it's in all areas of your life. And it's that mindset of like I'm gonna own everything, the good and the bad, and it's gonna be my fault. I'm just gonna take it as my fault, right? Like maybe it's not your fault, but I'm going to take it as my fault. And I'm going to try to figure it out. And I'm going to say, what could I have done differently to influence what did happen? It might be a very little micro tiny thing, but you probably could have done something. And if you think like that, then you'll start to solve those problems a little bit better. But you also have to want to. And so I would like tell people to make that decision in your mind. Like there can be nothing wrong if you want to clock in from 9 to 5 and not do any, just do the job. But you should be able to make that decision yourself. Like, don't look up one day and just find like, I don't know where I am at in this journey. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? That's a decision you can make. Like, I'm going to actively decide that I just want to work these set hours and I'm okay with that. And like, that's fine with me. That's a decision that you can make. That's not a decision I am comfortable making. I can't personally do that. Um, and so if you're going to make that, that's fine. If you're not going to make that and you want to work harder and take more risks and learn more and push to completion on everything that you do and take ownership, then you need to make that decision and you need to work hard in that area. But those are two very different lifestyles and positions and businesses and just everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. 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 Got it. Yeah. So being intentional, as you're saying as well, one way or the other. And like you said, I mean, if you're happy with your 9 to 5 lifestyle, then you made it, right? You succeeded. Like nothing is wrong.
Yeah,
Like you're
exactly.
good.
Totally.
But then if you have that thing inside, where you're feeling guilty, that you feel like you're not doing enough, and you have more to
Yeah.
give, then that's where like just
Right.
have your actions match your intentions or your goals, right?
Exactly. Yep. And I do know people in both areas. And when people get that right, they're very happy. So there's nothing wrong with either one of those. But you should intentionally make that decision and intentionally know what you're doing and not just let life take you, and because that's never going to work out. You're never going to have, real purpose in what you're doing if you just kind of go with the flow. I mean, I think having the Lord to lead you in a direction is what I would say to do. Like, don't try to make this decision on yourself. Pray about that. What's best for you and your family. Maybe it is that you clock in for 9 to 5, and maybe you have a interesting family dynamic where like that has to be your primary focus during the day, and so you need to figure something else out, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But making that switch, making that decision, is good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then just a little note as well on the tactical sales side of things before we loop back into mindset again to conclude here. What has worked in terms of making that transition from B2C to B2B? So what's different in terms of getting B2B clients that have multiple properties, or has it just been the same channels and you just have happened to get those inbound leads that just happen to be
Yeah,
multi property investors?
yeah. I think we've only had one of those type of people come in through like an inbound lead. It is very much so a referral from a friend of a friend of a friend type of a situation usually. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of putting yourself out there. If you already have the basis of, being a high score, property management company in the market, that helps. You already have a name there. And so, but it's just being real and honest with people that and on introduce you to other people and having good connections, but also like not just trying to get things for yourself, like actually doing things for those people. You know what I mean? If that person's a real estate agent, send them listings, send them clients, send them buyers, do things like that. Like that helps them as well. They don't have to just help you all the time. And so I think doing small things like that has opened up a lot of doors for us, with those bigger type clients that we've worked with in the past and still work with now. Maybe work with in the future, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. And then just to kind of wrap things up, man, when you look ahead, what are you most excited about? Vision wise, in terms of what you guys are trying to build, but also what's something that at the same time you are cautious about, and you know, in terms of something that you are working on hedging for, protecting yourself for, preparing for. So a little bit of both, the good thing that's coming ahead, as well as the things that you are on the lookout for in terms of being ready for whatever might come.
Yeah, something coming ahead. I would say we're working hard on growing our core business. just adding property and growing our business in general in this market. And so I think that will just continue. Like I think what we're doing now is working, and we'll just pour gas and just keep going. So I'm excited to
Mhm.
do that. I'm also excited to bring on more unique type properties that can perform really well. And in conjunction with that, like really working on marketing and pricing those well. I mean, hedging wise, obviously there could be a downturn here. I think we could be prepared for a potential economic downturn if it happens. I mean, I think, we've seen that in the past. And so just getting ready for what that looks like, specifically on the revenue management side of things, like kind of preparing ahead and looking at what our pricing strategy looks like. Just very, very intentional with that. Not letting that slip at all, like looking very far in the future and making those decisions now. I think is just doing everything that we can there, and maximizing the revenue per property for everything that we have and making sure that everyone's getting the best return possible. Is I know those are pretty bland answers, but honestly, fundamentals at scale. So it's just fundamentals at scale, repeat, fundamentals at scale, repeat. Just keep going.
Yeah, definitely, man. And Jack, any final words of wisdom, advice, things you wish you knew when you were getting started, things you wish you had learned sooner, things that maybe books as well that you might want to recommend. Just kind of like closing thoughts. This has been super insightful, by the way. I've taken a lot of notes. It's been very inspiring as well. But yeah, just wondering if there's any final pieces of advice that you'd want to share here.
Yeah. I think kind of I don't know if you heard the dials and switches kind of mindset of that's something that I wish I probably would have known a little bit earlier. And something I'll be focused on a lot is I can have a tendency, especially at times earlier on, where I have a switch that I'll turn like, I'm going to be a hustler and I'm going to work as hard as I can. And I'm going to do that. And it's going to bleed into everything in my life, whatever that might be. It might not be work. It might be golf. I'm going to play golf like crazy for the next 2 months. And I really get singular focused on whatever that thing is. And I think transitioning that into more of a dial where it's like I have a switchboard of dials, and you go into work and you crank that dial to 10 and you are the absolute best that you can be while you're there, no matter what. And then as you come home, you're able to kind of turn that one off and turn on that family dial and turn that up a little bit more. And then you're focused there. And if you're going to work out, you turn that dial on. You know what I mean? It's really balancing those areas. But also it's balancing them in a way that you're pursuing greatness in all of them.
Mm.
You're trying to honor the Lord in all of them. You're not letting them slip. You're giving each one the attention that it deserves because that's where the Lord's put you, and you should do that. And so I think that's something that wish would have known sooner. I think I've been working on that. I think I'll develop that over the next year, this year or so, of like really focusing on that. That's gonna hopefully help me in all areas, raising my daughter, being a good husband, leading this company. I want to be able to do all those things well and make sure my time is applied well. So
Hmm.
I think that as far as a book goes, Extreme Ownership is always a book that I just recommend
Shout
people
out to
read. It's
Joko.
like,
Shout out to
yeah,
Joko. Yeah.
I mean, that alone is just a great, like, read that book and go from there, I would say.
Yeah,
How
it's
to
a
Win Friends
great
and
one.
Influence People's another really good one, too. I mean, those two in conjunction can be great, do a lot of things for you if you take them seriously.
Yeah, yeah. And what was the term you used for the two mindsets? The switch is the switch
Dials and
mindset,
switches.
dials and
Yeah.
switches, right? And so, do you
Yeah. I didn't
think?
make this up, but
Okay. Oh, where do you remember where that one came from?
yeah, it came from I don't know where it came from. I heard DJ Shipley use it online, so you can look
Okay,
him up.
okay, okay, okay.
But yeah,
So what I'm curious about that mindset, shift there is, could you have gotten to where you are today had you being more thoughtful about balancing the different areas of your life earlier on? Or do you think this is a shift that needs to happen after a certain period of like intense
yeah,
hustle in one area alone, which leads you to a point where you can now think about your life more holistically?
it's a great question. I think it can be individual, so I think it can be very different depending on what you're doing and what you want your path to be, right? So, like I said, I want to be the best at whatever I'm doing, and so for me, there was a time when it was needed to have a switch, right? Especially for like the first year or two there, it was like I just need to hustle like pretty much all the time. I don't have much responsibility. We rented a house. I didn't even have a mortgage. So I was like, um, I can like really, really just work hard. I don't have to make that much money. I can just try to work hard and see what comes from that. Um, as you have other things come into your life, though, I do need to be responsible. Like I am a husband, right? I am called to be that. I need to make sure I do that well. And so that does transition. That doesn't mean I work less hard by any means. I would say today I actually work harder than I did back then because I'm actually working on the right things. What is working hard? It's inputs and outputs. If my outputs are equaling much greater things at this point than they were then I was doing the wrong inputs. And so I think that's just a maturity thing. You learn that. And so I can confidently say I think I'm working harder and I'm working more intentional, but it's not just work, it's in all areas of my life. And I want that to continue to improve and to honor the Lord and all that I do, and hopefully be an example for others in that.
Love it, man. Love it. Amen. Really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much for your time. Could keep you here for 2 more hours, believe me, and we would have things to chat about. But I'll let you go, man. It was great to have you on. Thanks again for the time. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.